Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Growers Not Showers, episode number
Five.
I knew that. Man, we're moving along quick. This is good. Camille, mate, how's your day been? How's your week been? You said it's been a hell of a day. What you been up to?
Well, for those that haven't heard, I've been injured for the past week. So I was deadlifting last week. Just top set was a little bit shaky, but wasn't too bad. So I backed off by quite a significant amount of weight because I knew something was going on. And then on the back off, just felt like a little pop. And I was like, fuck, yeah, drop that. If I had done another rep, I genuinely think I would have been out 4 months. Luckily, I dropped the weight straight away and I went to just immediately stretch my back out. Yeah, we think it's an annular strain. So at first I thought it was just muscular. And then we kind of thought about it with the symptoms, how I was presenting. Like I couldn't sit longer than like 30 seconds without being in pain. And that's like a classic symptom of disc. So like with disc specifically, you have like a spectrum. So you have an annular strain, which is basically the least worrisome. And then you've got like a disc bulge, and then you've got herniation, and then a complete prolapse, which is basically really fucked. And then on that spectrum, I'm on the most minor side, which is good because I'm back to training now. Like I went to train today. Had absolutely zero issues, like no pain, no discomfort even. Like I felt better, or my back felt better after the session than before, which is good. Definitely, obviously we've taken some exercises out. Definitely doing more of like a bodybuilding focus split now instead of the fucking the emo SPD, which is good. Apart from that, yeah, my mates, so Will came down the weekend. Will Bozov, who we had on the last episode. That was definitely really good to see him. I'm going home next weekend because we've got videography on the 25th.
Yeah,
yeah, so we'll probably see the boys again, which is good. Apart from that, pretty same old, mate, same old. I mean, like people overlook like the psychological aspect of getting an injury. Like there's two categories that patients or just generally people fall into. So there's a fear avoidant and a fear confronter. So how do you present like when you've got an injury? Are you someone who tends to do too much and wants to get back to training as quickly as possible, which is the majority of people? That's a fear confronter. They're people who are more prone to doing too much and overdoing it, which in essence makes their prognosis worse. And then you have fear avoiders, which are people who are like, so you got a low back injury, they're now scared to bend over, you know, they don't want to do full movements, they're very cautious about going back to things, and again that worsens the prognosis. So the way you talk to someone depends on which category they fall in. Majority of people that go to the gym are fear confronters. You know, if someone did the back out like me and Jack went to me, okay Camille, no gym for 2 weeks, you can't train at all, I'd probably go and kick him in the head. You know, a lot of rehab is figuring out what's still safe to do, because a lot of people, if they get injured, they still want to go to the gym, you know, and if they don't go to the gym, that's going to make their prognosis worse because of how much of an influence your psychological well-being has on your physical well-being. So I always say to my clients who have been injured in the past, you know, because of the knowledge I have around rehab and exercise selection, etc., I'm like, okay, we can still do this, or we can still do this, you can still go to the gym, you know, we can still do cardio, like etc., etc. And that makes the rehab process so much better because you're still doing something instead of just being completely out. Like the first 2 days when I was injured and I was just lying in bed were the worst, like psychologically, because I couldn't do anything. I couldn't get out. I could barely brush my teeth. Like I couldn't cook food in the kitchen because I had to sit down every 30 seconds. Like it was horrible. So like managing that psychological aspect regarding your clients is really, really fucking important.
Yeah, man, 100%. I think the impact of injuries, like you said, isn't just physical, it's like psychological. And I think, yeah, it's not often talked about. Like if you look at like mainstream athletes or like Olympic athletes, and you look at like mental health issues, or like when in a training season mental health is at its worst, or when people are struggling the most, it's always whenever there's like injuries or other things going around, because when your whole identity is linked to training, particularly if you're a coach as well, like your identity and your business is linked to training. And so when you're injured, it can be like absolutely catastrophic. And I think for a lot of people, especially people who obviously kind of, as we spoke about, in a weird way, we're lucky that it happened to someone like you and you know what to do. But I'm sure there's coaches out there who don't understand like injury science at all. Like they've got no knowledge. And so for them, when they get injured, it's probably also a little bit embarrassing because it's like, you don't know what to do. You don't know what's going on. It's a complete mystery. You've just got to kind of like firm it and move on. Speaking from personal experience, like when I fucked up my knees, and I had pretty bad patella tendonitis, the road to rehab was just being, even more so than bodybuilding, I had to be extremely emotionally detached and just be like, follow the plan and execute it. Afterwards, I would think on it and report back. But if I was warming up and knees felt good, doesn't matter. Like load stays the same. If I'm warming up and things feel a little bit crap, don't get frustrated, load drops. And like, it was just kind of being very, very meticulous and just being like, it is what it is. Some days you wake up the next day and your knees would be crippled, and I'd just be like, well, it is what it is, report that back. But it's very easy to like feel pissed off and annoyed and frustrated. But what you realistically have to do is just be very, very meticulous, like you said, not overdoing it and not underdoing it as well.
And like, there's a lot of fear going behind like knowledge regarding rehab. Like a lot of coaches will shy away from it because they think it's hard. And coming from someone who's done it for the past 4 years, it's going to be hard, but you have, or coaches in general have the foundational skills in order to learn rehab effectively. You know, anatomy, physiology, you know, generally how the body works is super important. It's just a matter of connecting the dots at that point. You know, I have a background, or had a background before uni, in terms of like physiology, anatomy, you know, that those are my favorite topics in school. And it's what I did at A level as well. So coming to uni, already understanding that made everything connect so much more. But that's why the academy is so good as well, is because we don't offer like we don't offer 2-hour lectures where, you know, half the shit we're talking about, you already know. It's like, we're doing like 10-15 minute, you know, sometimes 20-minute videos, but like condense specifically the things that you need to know in order to get better with your knowledge and stuff like that. So yeah, get at the academy.
Yeah, and you guys get to pick what those videos are as well. Like that's not me and Kamal picking. Yeah, I think injuries are an interesting one. We harp on them a lot, and I think a lot of people, if you ask most coaches like, are injuries important or is injury management important, they say yes, but like you don't really get it until you get it. Do you know what I mean? Like once you've had a chronic injury, you're then like, oh shit. Like even when like my knees are pretty good now, even when I'm sending sets, it's still kind of in the back of my mind of like, even if I'm adding a plate per side and I'm getting away with it, like I could easily add 2 or 3. I'm like, no, like you took the win, be careful. Like the amount of time, like if I do something a bit iffy and I get it, I'll be like, cool. Or like if you see me take a big PR on like a leg press or something, I guarantee the second and third set either didn't happen just because of like fear of like overdoing it and pissing that tendon off, or they got swapped for a different movement, or they were matched from last week. Like a lot of the time I'll do that. If I aggressively pursue load on something and I get away with it, I'll be like, right, match the second sets or the second and third set because I took such a big progression, and they'll still grow off it. But yeah, you have to be so careful. And the thing is, if you're a coach, you'll get injured and you know how to manage your training, how to manage fatigue, you know, how to manage joint actions and volume, etc. If you're a client, you're gonna get absolutely shagged. Like your joints are going to get fucked. How many coaches can really say that their clients send 100% footage and 100% of those sets are perfect? Like we all know that, you know, there are clients who have sets that are imperfect, and so they're going to lead to injury long term, like if you don't intervene. And sometimes clients don't quite get that, and so knowing how to rehab stuff is so fucking important. And that's part of the reason why, like that's the entirety of like why Camille is here, is because he's knowledgeable and he has knowledge that a lot of fucking people need, and it's not talked about enough in coaching. Like as soon as you as a coach turn around and say, oh, you're injured, go and spend a bunch of money on rehab, like they're just going to drop you because you can't rehab it. And they're going to be like, well, this is expensive. Like you go see an osteo, you're going to spend like, you know, depending on how often they want you there, like a few times, like when my knee was really bad, I would be there like twice a month, spend like 50-60 quid a go. And it's like, you know, that's the cost of some people's coaching, you know. And like if I was strapped for cash, I'd be like, hey coach, I'll get back to you. I need to rehab this, you know, like not that much growing is really going to happen while I'm fucking injured. So knowing how to manage that from a coaching standpoint gives you an ability to work with people. You can work with other people's injured clients, but also just keeps you safer and your clients safer. That like, not only can you avoid injuries, but if they do pick it up and they're like, you know, oh, but I might need to leave or whatever, you can be like, no, I got you. I remember I had a sign up recently, where he was saying like, oh, I've got an injury at the minute, so I'll join up later. And I was like, nah, bro, we got that. You're fine. Got an injury specialist. And he was like, oh, sweet. And it's like, back, like,
Yeah.
as soon as you can say that, like, if you join the academy or you join the academy through Kamel and you get a client sit on a call and be like, oh, but I'm injured, you can be like, I got you, bro. And then you can just ask Kamel and Kamel will help you out with managing that client's injury.
Yeah.
You know, the client doesn't even need to know. Shh, we're all friends here.
Yeah.
Secret. But yeah, like injury management is a lot bigger than people give it credit for, you know.
And the thing is, like, the body is designed to heal itself. So sometimes someone might be injured and you think you know what's going on and you might give them some exercises and they happen to get better anyway. And then you get this false illusion of like, oh yeah, no, I can help this guy. But like, which is the case. I will, you know, someone who's got fairly a good experience of it, a lot of people can heal injuries by themselves, especially like traumatic injuries. If something happened at the gym or they popped a pec or, you know, like they pulled a muscle like me, what's caused that is usually external factors or dehydration, stress. You know, there was a recent study that suggested like improper form isn't even one of the main factors for getting injured. It's all the secondary factors. But like people get this false perception of like, okay, I can rehab people because I had one client that got injured and he got sorted in a week or stuff like that. But then when you get an actual client who's injury prone and like you might give them some exercise, they're not responding to it. Okay, fuck, ChatGPT, like ChatGPT some exercises, they don't fucking respond to it. And then you're just looking at it like, fuck, like this client's actually fucked. Like he's got injuries and like I've tried all the conventional stuff. I've tried ChatGPT and it's not helping. And it's like, there's so much more to rehab than just exercises. Like it's a whole spectrum of, you know, managing like expectations, the psychological aspect of it, even sociological as well. Like, you know, I might rehab someone different if they're a manual laborer compared to if they work a desk job, like things like that. And like the one thing osteopathy has taught me, again, I sound like a rabbi when I say this, but like a holistic approach. It's like, there is no right or wrong answer for every single client or patient. There just isn't. Every single program, whether it's training or rehab, needs to be tailored to what they need. Not what they needed 2 weeks ago, not what they needed, what they do need in 2 months, what they need right now. And that's what makes osteopathy so beneficial, is because we're constantly changing the approach that we're doing. We're constantly reassessing and be like, okay, last week the quads were really tight, but this week they've really released. But that might be your hip flexor, might go into your glute or your lower back. Constantly reassess and constantly change in order what they need to get better. Another bone that I want to pick is like, people think you get one rehab program and then that's it. You run that for 6 months and then fucking you're good to go. It's the same thing with hypertrophy, right? Or hypertrophy training. Like you need to be looking at every single week and need to be adjusting. Okay, how can we get a little bit more out of this? How can we increase the volume? How can we increase the amount that we're actually stimulating the muscles in order to create an effect? With rehab, you know, it's the same concept as hypertrophy, but instead of producing a hypertrophic stimulus, you're producing, you know, stability or strength. So you're still working around the same way. You know, the three main archetypes that I use for rehab is, one is mobilization, and that's split up into two. So first would be like gentle mobilizations, not to end range, and once that's painless, we go to full range mobilization at end range. And then we have loading, which again can be split up. So, you know, we can do eccentric loading, we can do what's it called, isometrics, things like that. There's neurological things that we can do as well. So what's it called? I can't think off the top of my head. But then the third one, the most important one, is integration, is what people tend to forget. It's once you finish the rehab, you know, isometrics aren't as paid for, or, you know, doing eccentric, concentric loading on isolations. We now need to integrate that into big compound movements, because it's all fine and dandy you being able to activate and feel your hamstring on a fucking hamstring curl. But can we recreate it with an RDL where it's a multi-joint movement? That's what's really, really important. But yeah, so mobilization, load, integration. Yeah.
Bosh, man's on it. Yeah, I think often like coaches can you can fall into the trap of like injury avoidance. You know, it's like I saw a coach I follow recently did a good talk on it where he was like, you know, if a client says, "Oh, I've got painful knees," and they're squatting, a lot of coaches will be like, "Oh, you know, just pre-exhaust your quads a little bit on a leg extension. You won't use as much load." Like, and that might work for that client, but you haven't addressed the actual issue at hand. Like, all you've done is just find a workaround. And the concern is, okay, but then what if the leg extension then begins to hurt? Or what if over time they build up load back on that squat and that causes pain again? And like, that's the thing, is it's very easy to just limit your exercise selection over time. Like, if every time you get an injury, you just limit your pool of exercises, you are going to end up being unable to train. Because if your quad training loses diversity, if you're going to keep the volume somewhat similar, or if you're just going to progress it over time, you're going to end up doing a lot of repetition. And repetition, particularly close to failure, is one of the variables that can cause injury. So if you're doing repeated patterns over and over again, you're going to cause injury. So then you can't do that pattern anymore. That causes pain. And then you're running on less patterns. So there's more repetition. Like, you're genuinely going to get to the point where doing any form of exercise or loading for that is fucking awful. And that's not really where you want to be. You want to have a wide pool of exercises to pick from so that you can keep the way you're exposing a muscle to load varied, or the joint angles that you're using varied, so that we're not just like, you know, hammering the quad in the same position every single time, because you're going to hammer the knee in the same position every single time, and that's going to piss it off over time.
Yeah, and there's always some cunt that's posting about how like there's no benefit to be, or you can grow more muscle in the lengthen, so like you don't need to be doing the concentric portion. It's like, motherfucker, how can you train the eccentric but not the concentric? That's like training adductors but not abductors, or training your triceps but not your biceps. Like, if you said that to a client, like, "Oh, we're gonna just train biceps, not your biceps," they look at you, that's fucking stupid. Or like, "Just train your chest, we're not gonna train your upper back." Like, agonist, antagonist, in order to maintain a proper mechanical function. Like, people will train adductors but will skip abductors, and then they'll worry why they've got hip pain or knee pain when they're squatting. And it's just like, well, that's what's going to happen. That's what creates imbalances, because agonists, antagonists have to work together in order to create locomotion. If one contracts, the other one relaxes. So it's like, if you're not training one and one's obviously stronger than the other, it's going to create imbalances. You know, how can you train the eccentric and not train the concentric?
Yeah, it's like the footballer thing of like them, they always tear a hammy because they're just so weak in comparison to their quads.
Yeah, exactly. Because they just don't train quads. Because, oh yeah, I run, so that creates enough of a stimulus in my quad. Nah, in hamstring, sorry. It's fucking bullshit.
Exactly. I had a footballer sign up, and I was like, right, first thing we're going to do is train the fuck out your hamstring. And he's like, why? And he was like, wouldn't quads make more sense? I was like, how much quad training do you do? And he was like, a lot. And I was like, yeah, we're going to train your hamstrings. Like, you just don't need as much, like, in terms of volume, we're going to do enough to elicit a response from your quads. But like, you reach a point where, like, if we're getting sports specific, there's a point where like you're doing so much quad work, your quads are so strong, the carryover to the pitch is so fucking minimal to a certain point. Do you know what I mean? And that's when it becomes a case of like, it's like, you're not a bodybuilder, you're not a powerlifter. Like, as long as you are improving on the pitch, cool. But now it's like important that we put in that injury prevention and focus on your hamstrings. But yeah, like you said, like, when people, I think bodybuilders in particular, forget that like your muscle is attached to joints. And like, I call it, like, I don't know what, I'm sure there's a word out there for it, but I call it like monoset hypertrophy versus polyset hypertrophy, where like, if you did one set of one thing once, if you did one set of a lateral once, making it super length and focus, crazy tension at the bottom might make sense. But you don't just do something once, you repeat it. And the thing is, yeah, set by set, you might get slightly more stimulus if it is like, cool, maybe that's the case. But the issue is, like, if that injures you after 5 weeks, then what was the point? And then if that rehab takes 5 more weeks, it's like, well, yeah, like, what was the point? You know, like, if it only then is worth it if you can say, oh yeah, but I know that the length and range gave me twice the stimulus. because then it's almost, you could argue it's worth it. But again, that's just not really what we see. And the amount of people that just like give crazy length and stuff, and then be like, oh, my clients run into this issue, my clients run into that issue. You know, it's like, I was doing super lengthened rows, and now he's got like scap issues, and it's like, yeah. Or you look at their positioning or they hurt their shoulder because they, you know, cannot position themselves, they cannot protract at all on a press. And so their shoulder's just excessively round forward. There's just excessive protraction, and then they end up like fucking a shoulder. And it's like, okay, well, you've changed their posture because you've literally just built an ability to protract and like kind of retract, but not all the way. Yeah, it's stupid. Like, you're not really going to gain that much more hypertrophy per set, but you're going to fuck yourself up long term.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. If you look at the way that like bodybuilders program hypertrophy versus like injury specialists program hypertrophy, like the difference is crazy. And particularly when like we're kind of over time seeing more and more that like the volume demands that you need to grow aren't as high as we thought. Like, it makes more sense to dictate more time to things that are going to indirectly benefit you in terms of growth, and not just like, it's not a case of like, oh, 4 or 5 hours in the gym is ideal for growth. Like, we know that it's not. So you don't need
longevity as well. Like, how long you can run a specific phase for will dictate how effective that phase is. You know, you don't want to run a phase and have to pull out, especially if it's going well, because of an injury. Yeah. Like, that is one of the most horrible things as an athlete you have to experience. If you know, say you're a bodybuilder and you're going for a bulk, it's really successful, you're putting on a shit ton of muscle, you know, everything's flying well, then bang, you get injured. You never thought it would happen to you, but it did, which is like stereotypical story regarding injury. Yeah. And you know, you're out for, this is as well the thing that people don't realize is like, when you get injured, you don't know how your body's going to react, and you don't know how long you're going to be out for. I could have pulled my back last week. I could be out for months. I could be out for weeks. I could be out, you know, for a couple of weeks. I didn't know. Simply, I had to wait and sit there and wallow and be like, I just hope this is not going to take, you know, fucking months to heal. Yeah. It's like when, like Will, my housemate, I'll give an example. So he's got grade 1 or had a grade 1 PCL strain, which is, I wouldn't say a minor injury because ligaments take longer to heal than tendons and muscles, but it was a grade 1, so there's 3 grades. Grade 3 being a full tear, grade 2 being anywhere between 5 to 99% of fibers, and then grade 1 is 5% of fibers and below that are affected. So it could have been rehab easily, but again, Will's hypermobile as well. So he's got excessive range of motion in his joints, which means he's less likely to get OA or age-related changes when he's older, but he's more likely to get everything else. Being hypermobile is like one of the biggest risk factors for getting injured in the gym. And it's like, if you don't have this previous knowledge as a coach, how are you going to do that? Majority of coaches don't even know if their clients are hypermobile or not. They'll just be like, oh, he's doing full run. Like, I'm so proud of him. Well done. Like,
he's doing so much run, his knees are bent backwards.
Yeah. He's going into hyperextension. Oh, no, he's got full run, mate. Like, a team full run. But it's like, how, like you said, when you program for a client, it should reflect aspects of injury prevention. You know, if I make a program for a client, they might ask me, oh no, why are we doing this movement? Why do we do this movement specifically before this movement, when this movement's like the big compound, etc.? And I'm like, okay, to warm up your scap, you know, to work your glute med, to make sure we're fully getting full core engagement. You know, we might do abs before some sort of leg press or something like that. And it's got to reflect, you know, injury prevention and longevity, because that's how you manage it. You know, you shouldn't just be training balls to the walls without any sense of direction because, you know, because you feel like it or because it provides the most stimulus. That's why getting a coach is so important, because they are able to mold a program and put, you know, certain exercises before others, because, you know, certain muscle groups need to grow more than others. Yes. But also we might put other exercises in front of others because of rehab purposes, or, you know, to warm up our back or our legs effectively. And we might just add in extra exercises that you might not think are aesthetic or provide, you know, grow any specific muscle, but are going to give you a larger run rate to grow all the aesthetic muscles for longer, you know? Yeah, like going back to the point, a lot of coaches don't even know what hypermobility is. And like how I'd shift the program would be a lot different you know, for someone that's hypermobile than someone who's not.
Yeah.
Because I know they're going to get full range of motion, but also know that end range is going to be a little bit dangerous for them. So instead of being like, oh yeah, get a really deep stretch on this, or like a, you know, a chest fly or something, they're struggling to grow chest. Oh no, just stay in the stretch, bro. Stay in the stretch. And that, obviously, I wouldn't say that to a hypermobile person because they're going to pop a tech. Like, yeah.
It's
Yeah,
the same
and
thing.
that's just one of the examples. You know, there's so many other things to consider, like, you know, what are the hormones like? Do they have like hyperthyroidism? That's a really big one.
Yep.
You know, general blood work as well. This goes a little bit away from rehab, but because, you know, the way osteopathy is, I still got knowledge regarding like systemics and stuff like that. But like getting your blood work done as a client and sending it over to your coach, your coach should be able to look at it and be like, okay, no, there's some minor adjustments that we can make, you know, take this supplement, or, you know, start practicing this, you know, we need more sleep, etc., etc. But like your general just knowledge around conditions, not just musculoskeletal, but conditions in general, is so important. It's something that I talk about on the next lecture on Academy. It's like, yeah, like the MSK stuff is important, but like we need to know systemics as well. You know, I'm not asking you to be a GP, but like if a client comes to you that, oh, I got hyperthyroidism, my fucking metabolism's fucked, they need to know what it is and how to manage it, you know?
If you're a coach nowadays, you need to know so much more than you used to. And I think that's why so many coaches struggle now, because it used to be training and food, bro. It used to be top set, back offs, calm, just train super hard, 1 gram per pound of protein per day, or gram per pound of body weight of protein per day, and then just slam the carbs, brother. Do that, rinse and repeat. Like that is what it used to be. But now you need to know things about like biomechanics and alignment. You need to know about digestion optimization. You need to know about the menstrual cycle. You need to know about menstrual cycle disorders and female birth control as well. Women aren't just going to come to you and you're going to be like, you know, walk me through what you're taking. They're going to be like, nothing. Like they're going to be like, here's my birth control. You ever seen the side effects on birth control? It's like printed on like A1 paper. Ridiculous. Like you need to know what's going on there. Similar thing with like if you've got anyone who is coming to you with like you know, previous joint issues, alignment issues within just postural, just general postural issues that they've got, people who've had like surgeries done, etc., etc. I spoke to someone who had a client who the client didn't know that they were pre-hypertensive until they ran some tests, and then they found out they were pre-hypertensive. And it's like, okay, yeah, that's shit you should know. And imagine if they went to a different coach, they just would have developed hypertension, had chronically high blood pressure, and then potentially like, you know, run into some serious shit there, you know. Like you need to know what you're on about. You need to know how to interpret blood work. You need to know when to ask for blood work. You need to know when blood work's a waste of fucking time and money. You need to know when to ask for it. And like that's the thing, is more and more people are educated now. And like I said this before, like there's a coach who I follow, and like one of his clients, I follow his client as well. His clients was talking about his training. His training was dog shit. The alignment was off, the ROM, the tempo, wank, like awful. And the coach had liked the videos. And I was like, look, this client represents you and your knowledge. And like, he's waffling, bro. And like a lot of people, it's not even like that advanced knowledge. A lot of people nowadays who just are generally into fitness would look at that and go, who's he coached by? Oh, I'm not getting coached by him. Like, because they know that what he's doing is like blatantly wrong. So the guy was like, oh, you don't want to go too deep on a chest press because you'll get injured. And I was like, it's a very interesting global statement. He was like, his ROM was tiny, like basically never went long at all. And he was like, you should never train under the stretch at all. It should always be mid to short, never anything lengthened, because it's just so bad for you. And I was like, well, technically, if it doesn't cause injury and you're doing it and loading it sensibly, you will be fine. It's just don't abuse it. Like you can make a very good case for injury prevention coming from training the stretch sensibly, you know. Otherwise, imagine you're squatting, you come half the way down, that's what you're used to, you accidentally go too deep, fuck. Like that's when you're going to run into issue. Like that's when you're going to overload a joint or a tendon. But it's like more and more people have more education now, more understanding. And so they will see your clients doing something, and if you're signing off on it, they're going to be like, what the fuck is going on there? And if they see that someone just doesn't know what they're on about, you know, they're very clearly going to go and join someone else. And I think more coaches need to know that. Like you talked about, like you're an osteo, but you understand blood work. Like fucking fantastic. Like that shouldn't be like, that is a flex, but it shouldn't be as much of a flex as it is. Do you know what I mean? Like it should just be like, understood that, okay, you're a coach, so these are all the hats that you wear. Like, you understand kinesiology, anatomy, physiology, psychology, you understand nutrition, you understand pharmacology, you understand endocrinology, fucking how many more ologies can we think of? Like, these are things that you should 100% understand, and you do. And like, more coaches need to understand that, like, coaching kind of originates from PT, but the demands placed on you are completely different. Like, if you're a coach, you are going to have to have some crossover knowledge with doctors, with injury specialists.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%.
Like, you should be able to hold a conversation with a dietitian, with a nutritionist, with a psychologist, with a doctor, with an injury specialist. Like, these are people, like, if I went and got my blood work done and I showed it to the doctor, I should be able to walk them through it. If I should be able to point to something and be like, I'm concerned about this. Is it a cause of this? What do we think of this? I've been doing this to solve it. What do we think? Like, I should be able to get involved with that conversation with that person. It's not just a case of like training and food anymore. It's not been for a long time. And I think that's why so many coaches just suck, or that's why their business sucks, because ultimately they're in an industry where people like that exist and they charge 100 per month. And like, if you're out there charging 2, 3, 4, 500 and you don't know that, you are fucked. It is that simple.
Yeah. And I think with like coaches online and stuff, it's people get so pinpoint focused on one ideology and they preach by it, and they don't keep an open mind. And like, it's all contextual. It all really depends, like I said, on the client, on the situation, and what you're trying to achieve. External variables, for you to say, oh, you can't train in the lengthen because you're going to get injured, it's such a bold statement.
Yeah.
Without any context whatsoever.
Yeah. As a global statement, it's wrong. You can make a good argument for some people in some cases, maybe for him, sure. On that movement, sure. But as a global statement, it's just categorically wrong.
Yeah. It's like saying, like, I don't know, pec deck grows more muscle than presses. Like, absolutely zero context. Like you said, there's an argument to be made for specific individuals. Someone can't really connect with a press. They have shoulder pain, for example. They can't really press heavy weights without getting injured. Yeah, they specifically would grow more muscle from a pec deck than a press. But in general, unlikely, and like I said, a lot of people, because of the demand of the knowledge is so high, people do a little bit of revision and be like, I'm so fucking knowledgeable. Like, they'll read about like metabolic stress and mechanical tension, and they'll write fucking 2-minute reel about like, well, we want to mainly focus on mechanical. Like, shut up, mate. Like, I know you just fucking Googled it. Like, you don't really know what you're talking about. Like, and it's just, it boils my blood. The more I actually put time and effort into my own knowledge, the more I realize how much everyone else is chatting shit. And like, I remember sending you a message. This is a while back now, but I was like, now that I see all these people posted on Instagram, I'm like, how do you not get angry at this? And you're like, I do. I just don't reply. Like, literally, like, this shit like genuinely like pisses me off. I'm like, you are so wrong, but like, I don't see a reason to argue with you, because
you see people throw buzzwords around that they clearly don't understand. I remember one person describing that a dumbbell curl had more mechanical tension than a cable curl. And I was like, I don't think you understand what that word means. You can't, that's not really how you quantify that. Like, at what point, for who, where, when? Like, just generally more mechanical tension. That's kind of like saying a squat has more progressive overload. It's like, that's not really a sentence you can make there. That's like saying I has chair. It's, like, it's kind of grammatically wrong. That's not really how you do that. Or I am chair. I am has chair. Something like that. It's like, it doesn't. That's not. You're kind of in the realm of like, there could be a sentence there, but that's not a sentence. More mechanical tension. Like, in what way? Like, how are you gauging that? Do you know what I mean? It's a very weird statement. But yeah, the thing about like coaches is, I think, because it's very easy to kind of like get wrapped up in your own bullshit. Like, I was talking to a client about this, where because people the whole day are asking you for advice, for help, a lot of coaches get very inflated egos. I think it's very easy to be like, oh, you know, I help these people all the time, and you don't realize when you're bullshitting, or when you're not quite sure, or when like you just need to know more. And I think the most common thing I hear is, I know enough. And my response is always, until when? Like, for how long? Are you really going to stake your business on that? Like, I know enough. Okay. When did that become the case? When you started coaching, did you know enough? No. Okay, then when did you know enough? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not even a case of like, even if you've got lifestyle clients, you can still apply high level ideas. I will still put concepts, plans, and ideas in place in people's training and food plans or check-ins or whatever I'm doing, even if they're a lifestyle client. I can introduce someone to the idea of, you know, correct and proper alignment, but I can do it in a simple way. Move this here, stick your bum out on that RDL, you know, small little things. I don't need to go into detail, but I can still understand those things, and I can still kind of explain them. You know, like I was doing, I did a mechanical advantage drop set on my girlfriend. I was like, do this until you can't, and then after that, change that to that and go again. Like, nice and easy. She doesn't need to know, she doesn't care what's going on. I was just like, run that, you know. Same thing for, she was doing glute kickbacks of a cuff, put the cuff around the ankle, was a little bit too hard, because the stack's quite heavy. So I was like, okay, I moved the cup up her calf, and she was like, oh, that's easier. And I was like, yeah, it is. I didn't explain to her, I've shortened the moment to your hip. She doesn't fucking need to know that. Like, she's a lifestyle client, but I can still apply those things. Whereas if you don't understand that, you're going to be like, oh, she can't do kickbacks. She really wants to do kickbacks. Like, for her, they feel nice. And like tons of girls on Instagram do them. She wants to do them. I'm fine with her doing them. They're a bit more short range. We can do them towards the start, etc. She doesn't need to know that. Again, I would say do this before you do that. Do this before. not glute ones, nah.
Okay.
Actually, no, I did for the exercise library.
Oh my god, I'm gonna have a look after this.
It was either me or Luke, but we both did them on the day because we took a few takes for each video. But each video, there's a different one where we swapped. We would go to an exercise. One of us would do it. One of us would talk, and we'd probably get it wrong the first time, and then we'd swap. And then the other person would just kind of jump off of what the other person said and then tweak it and correct it. Because usually someone would mumble or fucking burp or something. But yeah, like, again, that's where it's like, yeah, sure, I could have given my girlfriend a really basic plan, but she still benefited from high level knowledge. But she doesn't even need to know that. Like, but that's the thing, it's still a benefit to her. I still gave her the ability to do an exercise that she enjoys without, like, you know, absolutely fucking up her hip. And that's fantastic. That's great. I was able to recognize what was going on. I still gave her a good way of like developing and building muscle. She doesn't need to know the ins and outs of the details. But even if you're dealing with like someone who's brand new to the gym, doesn't mean that you need to give them super fucking basic plans. You can explain things in a basic way, but if it benefits someone else, it's going to benefit them too. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. There is something about coaches where they do kind of carry a little bit of ego, and it's very easy to, like, you know, fall into bad habits and think that you know a lot when really you don't, and kind of come up with these universal statements. It's like, I hated the whole optimal trend, not for the reason that people think, not because I'm like, oh, fuck learning. Like, when people are like, oh, what's the most optimal press? I'm like, genuinely, it doesn't exist, because an exercise on its own is completely unrankable. You need someone to interact with it. Like, you physically cannot rank exercises on their own. Like, you just can't. Do you know what I mean? It's like, when someone says, like, what do you think? If someone says which is better, a seated ham curl or a lying ham curl, I imagine in my mind two of them in a blank room. And because they didn't tell me who's interacting with them, they're just there. They're just doing nothing. They're just stationary machines. And I'm like, I can't tell you, because they're not moving. They're not doing anything. They're just there. Do you know what I mean? As soon as you tell me this person interacts with them, I'll be like, okay, now we're getting somewhere. But until you tell me who's interacting with them, I can't tell you. Like, it just doesn't exist. And that's the thing. And even then, depending on the person, I might say they're the same. This one's mildly better. This one's mildly worse. Again, depends. But you just physically cannot say one exercise is better than the other. Like, I view them as top trump cards. They kind of have their own like skills and attributes, and like they do this well, or they do that badly. There's no such thing as really bad lifts. All lifts serve a purpose. Like, people hate on the dumbbell lateral raise. It serves a purpose beyond just side delt hypertrophy. It does something very unique in that its resistance profile is very unique. It's a great way of warming up your grip. Passive challenge to the wrist extensors as well, which is great if you run into forearm issues. So it's great at that. But the fact that it has a shortened profile isn't a downgrade. It's just what it does. You know, it's the same way that like a Jeep isn't worse than a sports car. They just do things differently. They just are different. They're both cars. You can't really say which is better, a sports car or a Jeep. It's like, well, what am I using it for? You know, and again, it's the same thing with exercise. They all have a focus and a purpose. And so when you're pulling together a plan, as I'm sure Camille you're used to, you're pulling it together and you go, what fits that? Oh, a dumbbell lateral would fit that perfectly. That fits the needs of that client. That slots in perfectly. I'm not thinking what would be nice, a dumbbell lateral, and then kind of bullshitting my way around it. You know, I'm not like, oh, I need a lateral, I guess I'll pick dumbbell. Like, no. It's I need a lateral, or I need a side delt challenge. It probably needs to be lateral. It probably needs to do this other thing. Based on these things, it needs to not do this and ideally do this. Okay, dumbbell lateral.
I think a lot of coaches with programming specifically, they just use the same fucking exercises. Or the same template for a session. We're like, okay, we're going to do 2 side delt, 2 tricep, 2 chest, and exactly in that order.
Yep.
Without taking, without taking account the client's goals, like which muscles they're trying to grow more, which muscles they can take more volume from compared to less. You know, whether they have any injuries, do they need to warm anything up? It's like they don't even change the exercise, the order of the exercise, let alone the exercise selection. You know, they'll like fucking NPCs. Like, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me. Every single one of my clients has a completely different exercise plan. They might share some similar exercises, yes, but you know, they're never going to have the exact same plan because they don't have the same goals. You know, there's so many variables that go into making a successful plan, other than, okay, what muscle are we trying to focus, or how many hours can you spend in the gym, well, how many days can you train? What can I get you on a 6-day split, 7-day split? I get no fucking, like, it needs to be, again, tailored towards what they need the most, what they can digest, what they enjoy doing, and what allows them to grow, basically.
You should not be able to tell, like, if you took me and Camille's plans and you took a bunch of coaches' plans and you put them into like a Word document, so you removed all the branding, you should not be able to tell whether me or Camille or who made it. You should not be able to tell who made it. You should be able to tell what that client needs from the plan. You should look at it and go, okay, whoever coached this person, they're trying to do this. They're focused on this. They're trying to avoid this. They're influencing this. They're focused on this. They've done this. They've done that. It shouldn't be, oh, that's Jack's plan. Jack always does that. You know, like it shouldn't be that way. Like there are going to be plans that are similar because they're going to be people that are similar. But you're never going to, even beyond personal preference, even if you had someone who loved the same things as someone else, there's still going to be individual differences. Like range of motion assessments, I think a lot of coaches don't do these, either on the setup call or when you're getting someone to actually perform lifts. Like, I talk a lot about like retract your scaps before a press. That's not a universal cue. Like, it's such an overused cue. It's not universal. It's fairly smart to do, but how much retraction? It depends on the person, depends on their structure. For some people, you can exaggerate it so much that they literally cannot properly extend their shoulder. And so it's just going to limit their ROM, or it's going to cause, you know, excessive binding or issues there. You've got people that need crazy retraction. You've got some people where the level of retraction or protraction that they may need, they're not quite capable of achieving it, and that's okay. But again, that's where assessing someone's ROM and working out what works best for them is a good idea. And that's where you might need to change up exercise selection, order, etc., etc. Someone might develop an issue and need to work around that. But the amount of times people will like come to me either like with plans or they're joining or whatever. They won't tell me who the coach is. They've like copied a plan, so it's not on sheets. And I'm like, did this person make it? This was like this person. They'll be like, yeah. Or it's either yes or like someone very closely associated with that person. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm not surprised. It's just as soon as you fall into like there's one way of doing things, you're just inherently going to have clients slip through the gaps. If you program the same way every time, you can't guarantee 100% success. If you program based on a client, you can guarantee near 100% success. A lot of coaches will have 80 clients, make a plan. It has a 50% hit rate, which is awful, but that's still 40 success stories. So they look great. And the other 40 will probably be like, oh, I probably just don't train hard enough, or I probably just don't do enough volume, or I probably just need to send more form clips. And like when you have coaching on that scale, it's so easy to look successful. But if you see all the failed clients, you'd be like, oh shit, okay, never mind. It shouldn't matter who you are. You should. And sometimes I look at top coaches and I look at the rate of results that they're posting, and I'm like, that seems kind of slow. Like it looks rapid, but I'm like, for you, that seems slow. Like,
yeah, considering how many clients you have as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like, you could take a look at, you've got two coaches, one of them coaches 80 clients and one of them only has 10. But the one that has 10 has like a 90% success rate, and they've got like 9 really good transformations. But the one that coaches 80 has got 50% and has 40 transformations. And at face value, from like, marketing and looking at it from social media, it might be like, okay, the one that's got more clients is better. But like, if you actually work it out, it's not the case, and like you said, you could not be that good of a coach, but if you have enough results to back it up, if you have enough testimonials, because that's the thing people don't realize, like you could be not that good of a coach, but if you have a really good client, someone who is still going to make progress regardless of whether you're there or not, just because you put your branding on it doesn't mean that you help them achieve that.
Yep.
I have clients who I know are so capable, and if they were to leave me now, I'd be like, I have no issues with them looking after their own progress. Obviously they're going to make more progress with a coach, but I'm like, these clients are really good at staying on top of things, nutrition, they're not afraid to ask, they're not afraid to change things, etc., and like, especially if you have more clients, you're more likely to encounter people who are more, driven and can progress, don't come into as many hurdles. So you're just inevitably basically just going to get a lot of transformations under your belt. And transformations are a reflection of how good you are as a coach, but they're not the be all end all.
Yeah. It should be a success rate, really. It should be how many of your clients have you really had an impact on. I think it's so easy to brush the bad clients under the rug, or bad clients, not even bad clients, just the ones who aren't as successful. And yeah, I think a lot of high level coaches do it. And I guarantee some people hear that and go, oh yeah, but the guy with 8 clients has more time to help than the guy with or the guy with 10 clients has more time to help than the guy with 80. You shouldn't have a client base that's so big that you genuinely know that you're going to be shit.
Yeah, that's such a dumb way to work about it, because if your ability to coach and your service as a whole decreases with value as you get more clients, you're doing it the wrong way. There are reasons we put automations in place, and that's to have more clients, but that doesn't mean we take less time to give to our clients. Every client should get an equal amount of time and your effort. As soon as you start slipping, that is the very first indicator that you shouldn't have that many clients. The same way, when your progression starts to slip on a bulk, it's a good sign for a deload. It's the first sign. And after that, if you keep fucking pushing it, then your clients start leaving you, or you get injured like in a bulk, and then you're like, oh fuck, I should have deloaded like 2-3 weeks ago. It's the first telltale sign, and like, it comes from a place of like ego, because I can understand how a coach would feel like, oh, because I'm more scaled, I don't need as much time as like a more novice coach would in order to help my clients. But I also understand, to fully grasp the position that your client's in, and in order to help them, you need to take that time, because no one else will. Take a look at healthcare, for example. Like, GPs ain't taking the time to talk to your clients about their fucking injuries or their problems. Psychologists neither. Like, people don't get someone or don't have that person to actually spend time and look after them in their day-to-day life, but you as a coach do.
Yeah.
And you need to be able to sacrifice your time and give it to your client so they feel like genuinely like this person's like invested in me, so they then can invest in you. You know, I know coaches who will literally do like 2-3 minute check-ins for like every single client.
Yeah.
And it's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, or they just send like an emoji, like a thumbs up, and being like, yeah, all mint and again next week. Like, yeah, that might be the case. You know, don't get me wrong. I've had clients where I'm like, you know, this week has been good. You know, there's certain changes, blah, blah, but like, let's run it again next week. Fair. Yeah, no, I get it. But at the same time, that doesn't mean, you know, that you get a day off or like you get an extra 20 minutes spare because this client's doing well. You still need to, like, if they're doing well, your thought should be, okay, but what can we do better? I know they're doing well, but what can we do better? Is there anything else that we can adjust in order to make their progress better? You can't just say, oh yeah, this client's mint, I'll divert my attention away from him, you know? It's like, because if a client wasn't doing mint, what, are you going to give him more attention? No, it doesn't make sense. Every single client gets an equal amount of attention. You know, if they're doing well, can they do better? If they're not doing so well, what can we do to make them do better? Simple as that.
100%. Right. On that bombshell, better wrap up.
Bombshell.
Yeah, bro. Thank you everyone for watching. Please like, subscribe, tag us in your stories as well. Let us know any guests or topics that you want us to talk about, because we do kind of just freeball these. Give Camille a follow, Camille_Archer Academy on Instagram. For BNB Clothing, BuiltNotBorn.Store, use code Camille10. Drop me a follow, Jack_Archer Academy. And yeah, if you guys like these, we'll keep up with it. Well, we're going to keep up with them even if you hate them. Fuck you. But if you have an idea of what you want or what else, that'd be sick. Any guest topics, etc., that'd be good. Yeah, thank you everyone for listening. Any final kind of words of wisdom for everyone, mate?
Nah, peace and prosperity, love and guidance.